Ex-medic pretends to be alien girl's dad for birthday, then discovers he erased her real family. You are listening to the best HFY sci-fi stories. Please like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel to watch the next videos. The wind over Kestrel's spire never truly blew. It only whispered through the pressure vents, carrying the faint metallic tang of ozone and iron that clung to everything. Far below, the copper-red sea churned in slow, molten waves, its surface catching the artificial sun lamps in fractured glints of fire. The city itself hung suspended on anti-grav pylons thicker than ancient redwoods, a lattice of glass and alloy that gleamed like a scalpel held to the throat of the sky. Every corridor was polished to a mirror finish. Every citizen's footsteps echoed with the precision of a metronome. Here, order was not a virtue. It was oxygen. Marcus Hale moved through Deck 212 with the quiet efficiency of a man who had long ago learned to make himself small. 41 years old, shoulders still broad from carrying stretchers through zero-G firefights, but now folded inward, as if trying to occupy less space in a world that measured worth in data points. His apartment was a cube of white walls and recessed lighting, the kind of place where dust feared to settle. He ate his rations at 1900 hours, audited logistics manifests until 2200, and slept in a bed that auto-adjusted to his spine with clinical indifference. No photos, no music, just the soft hum of the city's core systems, pulsing like a distant heartbeat he no longer claimed as his own. He had been a combat medic once, orbital drops, plasma burns that cauterized screams before they left the throat. He'd held dying boys together with his bare hands while the medevac counted down. Then the wars ended and the bureaucracy began. Precision saves lives, they told him. So he learned to flag inconsistencies, a mismatched transit log, a refugee manifest with one too many names, a quiet deletion, and the universe balanced itself again. He told himself it was mercy, cleaner than shrapnel. That evening, the glass arcade on Deck 180 was nearly empty. The upper markets had closed. Only the maintenance drones skated along the rails, their optic lenses flickering like fireflies. Marcus was cutting through to the maglift when he heard it. A small, trembling voice that didn't belong in the sterile hush. "Sir, could you be my mom's dad? Just for her birthday?" He stopped. The voice came from knee height. A child stood there, lilac-skinned and delicate, her pointed ears twitching with nerves. She couldn't have been more than 8 in human years, clutching a scrap of paper folded into a lopsided card. Crayon scrawls spelled Happy Mother Day in uneven block letters, the R backwards. Her eyes, large, liquid gold, were fixed on him with a hope so fragile it felt like a blade against his ribs. Behind her on a bench of polished alloy sat a woman. Pale violet skin, threadbare cloak the color of storm clouds, hands folded in her lap with a dignity that poverty couldn't strip away. She didn't stand, didn't beg, just watched him with eyes the shade of twilight, waiting to see what kind of man he was. Marcus opened his mouth to refuse. The word was already forming, no, when something in the child's grip on that paper card caught him. The way her tiny fingers had creased the edges from holding it too tight. The way the woman's shoulders curved inward, protecting something invisible. He thought of the boys he couldn't save, the ones whose names he'd deleted from manifest because the numbers didn't add up. He crouched slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "What's your name, kid?" Mira, she whispered. "And this is my mom, Lyra. She doesn't have a dad for her birthday. The other kids said you need one to get cake." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. Not shame, pride maybe, or exhaustion so deep it had calcified into resolve. She met Marcus's gaze without flinching. "We don't need charity," she said, voice soft but steady. "Just a moment. One moment where she doesn't have to explain why we're alone." Marcus stood, the arcade lights reflected in his eyes, turning them the color of burnished steel. He should walk away. This wasn't his war, wasn't his mess. But the card in Mira's hand trembled, and something inside him, something he'd buried under years of audits and deletions, cracked open like a fault line. "All right," he said. The word came out, rough, unused. "Lead the way." They walked through the upper market as it shuttered for the night. Vendors eyed Lyra's cloak with the kind of disdain reserved for glitches in the system. One stall owner, a man with augmented irises that glowed corporate blue, leaned over his counter of ion fruit pastries. "We don't serve on regs here," he sneered. "Health codes." Marcus didn't speak. He simply stared, unblinking, until the man's smirk faltered. Then he tapped his wrist pad, entering the old military override code that still lingered in the system like a ghost. Payment processed. The vendor's mouth opened, closed. Silence fell heavier than any shout. Mira chose a small cake glazed with ion fruit syrup that shimmered like liquid starlight. Citrus-scented candles, the kind that flickered with holographic flames. A spool of green ribbon, because Mom likes green, it's the color of home. Lyra's fingers brushed the ribbon as if it were spun from memories. They ended up in an abandoned observation bay on the city's outer rim. The glass was cracked in one corner, letting in a thin whistle of wind. Below, the copper sea rolled in slow hypnotic waves, catching the city's underlights in ripples of blood and gold. Mira set the cake on a crate, arranging the candles with solemn care. Lyra sat beside her, cloak pooled around her like spilled ink. Marcus lit the candles one by one. The flames were small, defiant things in the vast dark. Mira sang, off-key, breathless, the words half forgotten from some refugee camp lullaby. Lyra closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was barely above the wind. I wish my daughter could stop being afraid." The words weren't for him, but they landed anyway, heavy as shrapnel. Marcus watched the candles gutter in the draft, wax pooling like tears. Mira blew them out in one eager puff, cheeks puffed out, eyes shining. For a moment, the bay wasn't abandoned. It was warm, alive. He didn't know it then, but that was the first time in years he'd felt his own pulse. Later, walking back through the emptying corridors, Mira slipped her hand into his. Her palm was cool, fingers sticky with glaze. "Thank you, Mr. Dad," she said, solemn as a vow. Marcus looked down at her, at Lyra, who walked with her head high despite the weight of everything unsaid. The city's lights reflected in the glass walls. 1,000 sterile stars. But in the space between their footsteps, something flickered. Small, stubborn, human. He didn't know why he'd said yes. Maybe because no one had called him anything but Auditor Hale in so long he'd forgotten his first name had ever meant something else. Maybe because the card in Mira's pocket was the first thing anyone had made for him that wasn't a performance review. As the mag lift carried them upward, the copper sea fell away below, and Marcus felt the first stirrings of a warmth he'd thought cauterized out of him forever. A small flame, yes, but in a city this cold, even a spark could burn. The maglift doors sighed open on deck 212, and Marcus stepped aside to let them pass first. Mira bounded ahead, her bare feet pattering against the seamless floor, the green ribbon trailing from her wrist like a comet tail. Lyra followed more slowly, her cloak brushing the threshold as if crossing an invisible line she'd never dared before. Marcus keyed the door behind them. Click. And the apartment's lights bloomed to life, soft and clinical, revealing the stark geometry of his life. One chair, one table, one bed folded into the wall like a secret. Mira stopped in the center of the room, turning a slow circle. "It's big," she said, voice hushed with awe. To her, maybe it was. To Marcus, it had always felt like a coffin with better ventilation. Lyra's eyes swept the space, taking in the absence of clutter, the absence of anything, and settled on him. "We won't stay long," she murmured. "Just tonight. The shelter's close at curfew." Marcus shrugged out of his coat, hanging it on the single hook with mechanical precision. "Stay as long as you need." The words surprised him. They tasted foreign, like speaking a language he'd forgotten he knew. Mira was already exploring. She pressed her face to the viewport, fogging the glass with her breath. "Look, Mom, the sea's on fire." The copper waves below caught the city's underglow, rolling in slow hypnotic surges. Lyra joined her, one hand on the child's shoulder, and for a moment they were silhouetted against the crimson haze. Two fragile shapes in a world too sharp for softness. Marcus busied himself in the galley nook. Rations were standard, nutrient bricks, synth coffee, a single bottle of something amber he'd never opened. He stared at it, then at the cake box balanced precariously on Mira's head like a crown. Ion fruit glaze. He hadn't tasted real fruit in years. Sit, he said, voice gruff. He cleared the table. There was nothing on it to clear, and set out 3 plates that matched 2 perfectly. Mira scrambled onto the chair, knees barely reaching the edge. Lyra hesitated, then folded herself opposite, cloak pooling around her like spilled dusk. He cut the cake with the same knife he used for ration packs. The glaze cracked under the blade, releasing a scent like summer storms in citrus groves. Impossible things in a city that grew its food in vats. Mira's piece was largest. She attacked it with the solemn focus of a surgeon. Lyra took smaller bites, eyes half closed, as if savoring a memory more than flavor. Between mouthfuls, Mira talked. Not the polished chatter of city kids, but a tumbling stream of half-formed wonders. Back home, the sky was green. Did you know? And the grass sang when you walked on it. Mom says it's gone now, but I think it's just hiding. She licked glaze from her thumb. Do you have a mom, Mr. Dad? Marcus's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Not anymore. Mira nodded, accepting this as easily as she accepted the cake. Lyra's gaze flicked to him, sharp with unspoken questions, but she said nothing. The silence stretched, filled only by the soft whir of the ventilation and the distant thrum of the city's heart. Later, when the cake was reduced to crumbs and the candles burned down to nubs, Mira yawned so wide her ears folded back. Lyra stood, smoothing the child's hair. Bedtime, little star. There's only one bed, Marcus said. He was already unfolding it from the wall, the mechanism smooth and silent. You two take it. The floor's fine, Lyra interrupted. Her voice was gentle but firm. We're used to it. He wanted to argue, wanted to say the bed auto-warmed, that the floor was cold alloy, but the look in her eyes stopped him. Pride, yes, but something else. Gratitude so raw it hurt to witness. Mira was asleep before her head hit the pillow, one hand still clutching the crumpled paper card. Lyra sat on the edge, stroking the child's forehead in slow, rhythmic circles. Marcus stood in the doorway, arms crossed, feeling like an intruder in his own home. She doesn't usually fall asleep so fast, Lyra whispered. You made her feel safe. Marcus shifted. It's just a bed. It's never just anything. She didn't look at him. Not down where we are. He turned away, busying himself with the galley. When he returned, Lyra had draped her cloak over Mira like a blanket. She stood by the viewport now, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the copper sea. It's beautiful, she said. From up here, down there, it's just rust and reclamation. Marcus joined her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. I used to think beauty was inefficient, he said. The admission slipped out before he could stop it. Took up space, resources, attention better spent on order. Lyra tilted her head. And now? He watched the waves. Now I think maybe order's just another word for fear. She didn't reply, but her shoulder brushed his. Accidental, maybe. Or not. The contact lingered, a spark in the dark. That night, Marcus slept on the floor with a spare thermal sheet. The alloy was cold, but the sound of Mira's soft breathing and Lyra's quiet humming filled the room like music he'd forgotten existed. He stared at the ceiling, tracing the faint glow of the emergency strips, and felt the first threads of something weaving through the cracks in his armor. Not peace, not yet, but possibility. Morning came with the city's artificial dawn, light blooming from the walls in measured increments. Mira woke first, padding over to poke Marcus's shoulder. Mr. Dad, can we stay another night? Mom said we have to ask nice. Lyra was already folding the cloak, cheeks flushed. Mira. It's fine, Marcus said. He sat up, joints protesting. Stay, as long as you need. The words were easier this time. Dangerous, maybe, but real. Days began to blur. Mira taped paper suns to the walls, cut from ration wrappers, edges uneven but bright. Lyra mended a tear in his uniform collar with threads she'd scavenged from somewhere, her stitches tiny and perfect. She cooked with the galley's limited supplies, turning nutrient bricks into something that almost tasted like stew. Marcus came home from audits to find the table set for 3, the air warm with scents he couldn't name. One evening, he found Mira asleep on the couch, head in Lyra's lap. Lyra was braiding the child's hair, fingers gentle. She asked if you were coming back, Lyra said softly. I told her yes. I didn't know if I should. Marcus set down his datapad. I'm here. Lyra's eyes met his. Why? He opened his mouth, closed it. The truth was a tangle he hadn't unraveled. Because this, he gestured at the paper suns, the mended collar, the sleeping child. This feels less like a glitch. She smiled then, small, tired, but real. Careful, Marcus Hale. The system doesn't like glitches that learn to smile. That night, a digital broadcast flickered across every screen in the city. The voice was calm, genderless, inevitable. Operation Data Purge commences in 72 hours. All invalid identities will be reconciled. Compliance ensures continuity. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Mira stirred in her sleep, clutching her paper card tighter. Lyra's hand froze mid-braid. Marcus stared at the blank screen, the words echoing in his skull like a countdown. 72 hours, 3 days. And somewhere in the city's vast data core, Lyra's file, their file, was a red flag waiting to be deleted. He looked at the two sleeping figures, at the paper suns glowing faintly in the dim light. For the first time, order felt like a noose, and he was done tightening it. The next morning unfolded like a secret the city hadn't meant to share. Marcus woke to the scent of something warm and spiced. Lyra had coaxed the galley into yielding a thin porridge from the nutrient bricks, laced with scavenged herbs that turned gray sludge into something almost golden. Mira sat cross-legged on the table, swinging her feet, a paper sun taped crookedly to her forehead like a third eye. "Breakfast," she announced, as if the word itself was a gift. Marcus rubbed sleep from his eyes and sat, the chair creaking under him in a way that felt domestic. Lyra slid a bowl across, her fingers brushing his. The contact was brief, electric. She pulled back quickly, busying herself with Mira's hair. They ate in companionable quiet. Outside the viewport, the copper sea caught the rising artificial sun, turning the waves into a sea of molten pennies. Mira chattered about dreams, green skies, singing grass, a father who built kites from starlight. Lyra listened with a soft smile, but her eyes kept drifting to the walls, to the paper suns multiplying like stubborn weeds in concrete cracks. Marcus cleared the bowls, his hands moving on autopilot, and found himself lingering in the galley. "I have to audit today," he said. The words tasted like ash. "But after, we could, I don't know, do something." Mira's ears perked. "Like a family day?" Lyra's gaze sharpened. "Mira..." "Yeah," Marcus said, surprising himself again. "Like that." The audit shift dragged. He sat in his cubicle on deck 150, surrounded by the soft beep of terminals and the murmur of colleagues who spoke in percentages and error margins. His screen flickered with manifests, cargo weights, transit logs, refugee tallies. A name caught his eye, Transport Convoy Epsilon 7, and his stomach twisted. He'd flagged that one. Last year, inconsistencies in fuel allocation. Deletion approved. He pushed the memory down and focused on the numbers, but they blurred. All he could see were paper suns. Home felt different when he returned. The door slid open to laughter. Mira was balanced on Lyra's shoulders, taping a new sun high on the wall, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. Lyra's cloak was discarded on the chair, revealing a simple tunic mended with careful stitches. She looked lighter, less like a ghost haunting the edges of the system. "Welcome back, Mr. Dad," Mira called, waving a strip of wrapper like a flag. Marcus caught it mid-air, the foil crinkling in his fist. Lyra lowered the child gently. "We reorganized," she said, a hint of apology in her voice. Indeed, the space had transformed. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted from afternoon naps. A small pile of mended clothes sat folded on the table. Mira's drawings covered the lower walls, stick figures with pointed ears, holding hands under yellow scribbles labeled Sun. Marcus set his datapad down. "It's, good." They spent the evening in quiet chaos. Mira insisted on family games, which turned out to be a mismatched deck of cards scavenged from a maintenance bin. Lyra taught them a refugee variant of poker, betting with ration wrappers. Marcus lost spectacularly, his military precision no match for Mira's wild bluffs and Lyra's unreadable calm. Laughter echoed off the walls, real laughter, the kind that started in the belly and spilled out unchecked. Later, when Mira was asleep curled on the couch with her card clutched to her chest, Lyra and Marcus sat by the viewport. The city's night cycle had begun. The copper sea below was a dark mirror reflecting the spire's underlights in fractured shards. "She draws you now," Lyra said softly, nodding toward a crayon sketch taped beside the door. A tall figure with broad shoulders, holding a smaller one's hand. "Says you have kind eyes." Marcus traced the uneven lines with a finger. "I don't." "You do, when you're not looking." Silence settled, comfortable as an old coat. Then Lyra spoke again, voice barely above the ventilation's hum. "This can't last. You know that." He did. The broadcast from yesterday still echoed in his skull. Operation Data Purge, 72 hours ticking down. But saying it aloud felt like inviting the system in. "I know," he said, "but tonight, let's pretend." She leaned her head against the glass, breath fogging it in slow circles. Pretending is dangerous. It makes the fall hurt more. Marcus watched her profile, the elegant curve of her ear, the way exhaustion had etched faint lines around her eyes. Maybe, or maybe it's the only thing that makes the fall worth it. She turned then, and for a moment their gazes locked. Something passed between them, fragile, unnamed. Then Mira stirred in her sleep, murmuring about green skies, and the moment folded itself away. That night, Marcus lay on the floor again, staring at the ceiling's glow strips. The apartment no longer felt sterile. It breathed. Paper suns rustled in the vents draft. Lyra's quiet humming drifted from the bed, a lullaby in a language he didn't know but understood anyway. He thought of the audits waiting tomorrow, the red flags, the deletions. And for the first time, the precision he'd worshipped felt like a cage. The following days blurred into a rhythm that shouldn't have fit but did. Mornings, porridge and paper suns. Afternoons, Marcus at his terminal, fingers itching to trace Lyra's file but holding back. Evenings, games, stories, the soft thump of Mira's feet as she danced to imaginary music. Lyra mended everything, his socks, Mira's tunic, even a tear in the thermal sheet. Her stitches were tiny miracles, holding the world together one thread at a time. One night a storm rolled in from the copper sea, rare, violent, the anti-grav pylons groaning as lightning cracked against the shields. The city lights flickered. Mira crawled into Marcus's lap without asking, trembling. He held her, arms awkward at first, then tightening as thunder rattled the viewport. "It's okay," he murmured into her hair. "Just noise." Lyra sat beside them, her hand finding his shoulder. They stayed like that until the storm passed. 3 silhouettes against the electric night. After Mira slept, Lyra whispered, "You're good at this. The dad thing." "I'm not." "You are." Her fingers squeezed his shoulder. "Don't argue with someone who's seen you catch a child mid-nightmare." He wanted to protest, wanted to list the boys he'd failed, the manifests he'd erased, but her touch anchored him, warm and real. The broadcast came again that night, louder, insistent. "Operation Data Purge. 48 hours to compliance. Report anomalies immediately." The screen's glow painted their faces in cold blue. Mira stirred but didn't wake. Lyra's hand slipped from Marcus's shoulder. "We should go," she said. "Before—" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. Marcus stood, pacing the small space. "Not yet. I have clearance. Old medic codes. Maybe I can—" "Marcus." Her voice cut through his panic like a scalpel. "You can't fix the whole system. Not for us." He stopped, breathing hard. "I have to try." She rose, crossing to him. Her hand cupped his cheek, cool fingers against stubble. "Why?" "Because of the paper suns. Because of the way Mira said Dad like it was a prayer. Because the thought of them vanishing into reclamation levels made his chest cave in. But he couldn't say any of that. Not yet. Instead, because this is the first time I've felt human in years." Lyra's eyes softened. She leaned in, forehead resting against his. "Then we stay. One more day." One more day turned into 2. The apartment filled with small rebellions. Mira's laughter echoing down the corridor. Lyra's humming syncing with the ventilation's rhythm. Marcus coming home early, datapad forgotten. He started bringing things. Citrus candles, a spool of green ribbon to replace the frayed one, a tiny music box that played a tinny lullaby when worn. On the eve of the purge, they sat by the viewport, watching the copper sea churn under storm clouds. Mira was asleep early, exhausted from a day of adventures that involved hiding behind furniture and declaring Marcus the Monster King. Lyra leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, a weight so light it felt like grace. "The system's coming," she said quietly. "I can feel it, like static before lightning." Marcus's arm tightened around her. "Then we'll be the thunder." She laughed, soft, surprised. "You're terrible at metaphors." "Maybe, but I mean it." Outside, the city's alarms began their nightly test. A low, mournful wail that faded into silence. Inside, the paper suns glowed faintly, defiant. Marcus closed his eyes, memorizing the moment. The warmth of Lyra against his side, Mira's soft breathing, the scent of citrus and home. Whatever came tomorrow, this was real. And for the first time, order wasn't enough. The final countdown began with a whisper, not a bang. At 1600 hours, every screen in Kestrel Spire flickered to life with the same serene message. Operation Data Purge, Phase 1 initiated, compliance is continuity. Marcus woke to the glow painting the apartment in cold cyan. Mira was still asleep, one arm flung over the edge of the bed, paper card tucked beneath her cheek like a talisman. Lyra stood at the viewport, cloak pulled tight, staring at the copper sea as if it might offer answers. The storm from nights ago had passed, leaving the waves sluggish and sullen under the artificial dawn. "Phase 1, she said without turning. "That means they start with the edges, the unregs, the ones no one will miss." Marcus sat up, the thermal sheet pooling around his waist. His mouth tasted like copper. Fear, maybe, or the city's recycled air. "We're not edges." Lyra's reflection met his in the glass. "We're glitches, Marcus. Glitches get patched." He rose, crossing to the galley on autopilot. The routine grounded him. Measure water, heat bricks, stir. But his hands shook, just once. He hit it by gripping the counter. Mira stirred, yawning, ears twitching at the unfamiliar tension in the air. "Morning," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Is it family day again?" Lyra forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Every day's family day, little star." They ate in silence, broken only by Mira's chatter about dreams. Green skies again, but this time with a tall figure holding her hand. Marcus barely tasted the porridge. His datapad sat on the table like a loaded weapon. He'd avoided it for days, but now he had to look. "I need to check something," he said, voice low. Lyra nodded, understanding. Mira was distracted by a new paper sun, folding foil with fierce concentration. Marcus keyed in Lyra's registry code, the one he'd memorized from the birthday vendor's sneer. The screen loaded slowly as if reluctant. Then the file bloomed open. Subject, Lyra Velar. Origin, Convoy Epsilon. 7, status, flagged, inconsistency in fuel allocation approved for deletion. M. Hale, logistics auditor L5, date, 3 to 12 days ago. The room tilted. Marcus's breath caught, sharp as shrapnel. He remembered that day. Rain on the audit deck. Real rain, piped in for atmospheric control. He'd been tired. The numbers didn't add up. Fuel shortfall meant delayed evac. Delayed evac meant complications. He'd signed the deletion with a stylus that felt like ice. Clean, he told himself. Efficient. Lyra's partner. Her home. The convoy dismantled. Parts reclaimed. Lives erased. Because of him. He must have made a sound, a choked gasp, because Lyra was suddenly beside him, hand on his arm. "Marcus?" He turned the pad toward her, her face drained of color, violet skin going ashen. She read in silence, lips moving over the words. When she reached his signature, her fingers tightened on his sleeve. "You," she whispered. "Not accusation, just fact." Mira looked up, sensing the shift. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby." Lyra's voice cracked like thin ice. She pulled Mira close, burying the child's face in her tunic. "Go play by the window, okay? Draw me a big sun." Mira obeyed, but her steps were slower, ears drooping. Marcus stared at the screen until the letters burned into his retinas. "I didn't know," he said. The words were hollow. "It was just data." A line item? Lyra released Mira and faced him fully. Her eyes, those twilight eyes, were wet but steady. Hundreds, Marcus. My bonded. Our neighbors. Children. Her voice broke on the last word. You deleted us like a typo. He wanted to argue. To say it was war's aftermath, resource scarcity, the system's logic. But the excuses curdled in his throat. He saw it now. The convoy's manifest wasn't numbers. It was faces. Lilac skin. Pointed ears. A woman clutching a child as the reclamation drones descended. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Lyra sank into a chair, hands trembling. I hated the auditor who signed that. Dreamed of, I don't know, confronting him, making him see. She laughed, bitter and broken. Never thought he'd light candles for my daughter's fake birthday. Marcus knelt in front of her, taking her hands. They were cold. I see now. Lyra, I see. Outside, the city's alarms began, a low, rising wail that set Mira's ears flat against her head. The purge had started. Somewhere in the lower decks, doors were sealing. Drones were sweeping. Invalid citizens were vanishing, one data point at a time. Mira ran to them, Paper Sun clutched to her chest. Mom, it's loud. I don't like it. Lyra pulled her close, but her eyes never left Marcus. What do we do? He stood, resolve hardening like forged steel. We fix it. How? Her voice was small, but hope flickered in it. Dangerous, bright. Marcus grabbed his data pad, fingers flying over the keys. Old medic clearance, still active, a ghost from the wars. He'd kept it for emergencies. This qualified. I can create a new record. Humanitarian medical unit. Families under my protection get wartime exemptions. If I tie you to me, family hail, Lyra said softly, understanding. But Mira... Marcus hesitated. Mira's file would be a clone. Falsified genetics. The system would flag it instantly. We'll make her real, he said. Adoption protocol. Backdated. I was a field medic. I delivered babies and drop ships. I know how to forge the markers. Lyra's grip tightened on Mira. If they catch it, we vanish, all of us. He met her gaze. But if we do nothing, you vanish anyway. And I stay here, deleting more lives to keep the machine running. Mira tugged Lyra's sleeve. Mom, are we in trouble? Lyra knelt, cupping the child's face. We're going to be a real family, baby, on paper, like the stories. Mira's eyes widened. With Mr. Dad? Yes. Lyra's voice trembled. With Mr. Dad. Marcus worked through the day, skipping his audit shift. He sent a forged medical leave. Stress fracture, orbital war residual. The system accepted it without question. He hacked deeper than he ever had, sweat beading on his forehead. Lines of code scrolled like blood. New record, family hail, guardian, Marcus Hale, combat medic, Riti. Dependents, Lyra Velar, bonded. Mira Hale, adopted. Status, humanitarian exemption, active, he hit enter. The screen flashed green. For a heartbeat, they existed. Then red warnings bloomed. Genetic anomaly detected. Mira Hale, cloned signature, flagged for inspection. Marcus's heart hammered. It's holding for now, but they'll send drones. Lyra paced, Mira clinging to her leg. How long? Hours, maybe less. The alarms grew louder, closer. Somewhere below, a scream cut off abruptly, erased. Marcus looked at them. Lyra, proud even in terror. Mira, Paper Sun crumpled in her fist. His faith in order, the precision, the clean deletions, lay in ruins at his feet. Guilt was a living thing now, gnawing at his bones. I did this, he said. The convoy, you, all of it. Lyra stopped pacing. Then undo it. He nodded. The system's cruelty had a face now. His. Outside, the copper sea churned, reflecting the city's flashing warning lights in blood-red pulses. Inside, the Paper Suns trembled in the draft from the vents. Marcus pulled Mira into his lap. Listen, kid, we're going to play a game. Hide and seek with the whole city. Mira's eyes were wide but trusting. Do we win cake? The biggest cake, he promised. Lyra met his gaze over the child's head. Fear, yes, but something else. Resolve. Forgiveness, maybe. Or the start of it. The door panel flashed yellow. Proximity alert. Drones inbound. Marcus stood, datapad in one hand, Mira's tiny fingers in the other. Time to run. The purge had come for them, but for the first time, Marcus wasn't on its side. The corridor outside Deck 2 of 12 was already humming with the low drone of patrol units. 3 sleek orbs gliding on magnetic cushions, optic lenses sweeping in crimson arcs. Marcus slammed the door panel, overriding the lock with his medic code. Click whir. The seal engaged, but he knew it bought seconds, not safety. Maintenance hatch, he muttered, yanking open a floor panel near the galley. Dust billowed up, carrying the stale scent of forgotten conduits. Lyra scooped Mira into her arms, the child's ears pinned flat with fear. Mom, it's dark down there. Shh, little star. It's just a tunnel to adventure. Lyra's voice trembled, but she forced steadiness into it, the way mothers do when the world is ending. Marcus dropped first, knees jarring on the grated ladder. He reached up, catching Mira as Lyra lowered her. The child's paper sun fluttered from her pocket, landing on the rungs like a fallen leaf. Marcus tucked it into his shirt, close to his heart, absurdly protective of crayon and foil. They descended into the spire's guts, a warren of pipes hissing steam, cables pulsing with blue data light, the air thick with ozone and the copper tang that seeped from every seam. Emergency strips glowed faint amber, just enough to see the terror in Lyra's eyes. How long, she whispered, until they crack the door? 2 minutes. Until they triangulate us? 5. He led them forward, boots clanging on mesh. There's a service node ahead. I can mask our signatures. Mira clung to Lyra's neck, legs wrapped tight. Are the bad robots coming? Drones, Marcus corrected gently. And yeah, kid, but we're faster. They reached the node, a cylindrical chamber throbbing with server stacks. Marcus jacked his datapad into the port, fingers dancing over cracked keys. Lines of code scrolled, masking protocol initiated. Family hail. The system accepted it, barely. A yellow caution flickered, then dimmed. Lyra set Mira down, kneeling to her, brushing dust from the child's tunic. Baby, there's something I need to tell Mr. Dad. Something important. Mira's lower lip quivered. Are we in trouble because of me? No, Lyra started, then stopped. Her gaze flicked to Marcus, pleading. He crouched eye level with the child. Mira, look at me. She did, gold eyes wide and wet. Whatever it is, we fix it together. Family rule. She nodded, slow. Lyra took a breath that shook her whole frame. Mira isn't mine, not by blood. The confession spilled out in a rush. I found her in the refugee yard on Deck 40, curled under a crate, clutching that same card. The system only lets families with children stay registered. Singles get reclaimed first. So her voice cracked. I claimed her, forged the bond markers, a proxy child to keep us both breathing. Marcus felt the floor tilt again, worse than any orbital drop. He stared at Mira, at the delicate points of her ears, the lilac flush on her cheeks that didn't quite match Lyra's deeper violet, the genetic flag on the new record. It all clicked. You lied to the system, he said, not accusation. Awe, maybe. I lied to survive, Lyra's hands twisted in her lap. Without her, I was invalid. With her, we were a family. On paper, at least, Mira tugged Lyra's sleeve. But you are my mom. You sing the green sky song. You make the bad dreams go away. Lyra's tears finally fell, silent, tracking clean lines through the dust on her face. I know, baby. I know. Marcus pulled them both close, arms enveloping them in the humming dark. Listen to me, both of you. His voice was rough but steady. Blood's just data. You chose each other. That's the only record that matters. Above, the corridor door exploded inward with a concussive thump. Drones poured through, lenses flaring red. Intruder alert, family, hail, terminate anomaly. Marcus yanked the datapad free. Nodes compromised, we move. They ran, through steam vents that scalded the air, across catwalks slick with condensation. Mira's breath came in frightened gasps. Lyra carried her now, legs pumping. Marcus brought up the rear, datapad clutched like a grenade. A side conduit opened into a disused observation blister, a bubble of transparent steel overlooking the copper sea. The storm had returned. Lightning stitched the clouds in white-hot veins. For a moment, they were safe, hidden. Marcus sealed the hatch, then turned to them. The proxy marker, it's what flagged us. The system sees Mira as a clone. A lie. Lyra sank to the floor, Mira in her lap. Then we're done. No. He knelt, opening the datapad. The screen glowed against their faces. I was a field medic, delivered orphans in war zones. I know adoption protocols, real ones, wartime ones. I can backdate it, make her Hale, legally, irrevocably. Lyra's eyes searched his. But the genetic scan, I'll overwrite it, use my own markers as baseline. Human-alien hybrids aren't unheard of in the records. I'll bury the clone flag under layers of medic exemptions. His fingers were already moving. It's risky. If they audit deep, do it, Lyra said, fierce. Make her real. Mira watched the screen, fascinated. Am I going to have your eyes, Mr. Dad? Something like that, kid, code flew. Adoption finalized, Mira Hale. Guardian, M. Hale. Genetic baseline. Human unknown. Medic override. He layered exemptions like armor. Humanitarian, wartime, emergency relocation. The record pulsed green, then amber, then green again. Family Hale, protected status. For one breathless second, the system accepted them. Then the blister's hatch buckled. Drones on the other side cutting torches, sparking white. Marcus stood, shielding them. It's holding, but they're close. Lyra rose, Mira's hand in hers. What now? We get to the core terminus. I pushed the record system wide. Make it immutable. He met her gaze. But we have to move now. Lightning cracked outside, illuminating them in stark white. A man who'd erased worlds, a woman who'd stolen a child to save her, and the girl who'd turned a lie into love. Mira held up her crumpled paper sun. For luck. Marcus took it, tucking it into his pocket beside his heart. For luck. The hatch glowed red hot. They slipped out the far side, into the storm-lashed maintenance spine. Alarms howling like banshees. Behind them, the drones breached the blister. Ahead, the city's core pulsed with cold, merciless light. Marcus took Lyra's free hand, their fingers intertwined. Human rough, alien cool. A circuit completed. Family Hale, he said. Let's go make it official. They ran into the thunder. The maintenance spine was a howling artery of wind and steel, rain lashing sideways through ruptured shield seams. Lightning strobed the catwalks in epileptic white, thunder chasing their heels like artillery. Marcus led, one hand clamped around Lyra's wrist, the other shielding Mira between them. The child's legs pumped furiously, but the gaps in the grating yawned like traps. He scooped her up without breaking stride, her small weight a burning anchor against his chest. Left at the junction, he shouted over the gale. His voice cracked, raw, desperate. Pressure tunnel to deck 100. Lyra's cloak whipped behind her like a battle standard, soaked violet clinging to her frame. She didn't waste breath on questions. Trust, absolute, terrifying, poured from her grip into his. Drones screamed in pursuit, a swarm of red eyes slicing through the storm. Plasma cutters carved the air where they'd been seconds before. One bolt grazed Marcus's shoulder, searing white-hot, and he stumbled, teeth clenched around a roar. Mira screamed, high and piercing. Keep going, he snarled, shoving them forward. Blood soaked his sleeve, but adrenaline was a brutal anesthetic. The tunnel mouth loomed, a ribbed maw of alloy swallowing them into sudden, muffled dark. Inside, the air was thick with coolant vapor and the electric stink of overload. Emergency strobes painted everything in arterial pulses. They sprinted, boots skidding on condensation-slick grating. Behind, the drones bottlenecked at the entrance, wings scraping sparks as they forced through. Marcus's mind raced faster than his legs. Core terminus, deck 100 central hub. Physical jacket, override the purge queue. His medic codes were root level once. If the system hadn't scrubbed them, a side panel exploded in a shower of sparks. Drone fire. Lyra yelped, shielding Mira. Marcus spun, data pad raised like a shield. He slammed an emergency protocol. Medic override, quarantine zone. The tunnel lights flashed amber. Blast doors began to cycle shut behind them, but the drones were faster. One slipped through the narrowing gap, optic lens locking on Mira. It fired. Time fractured. Marcus dove, twisting midair. The bolt took him in the ribs. Crack, pain exploding like a grenade. He hit the ground hard, Mira tumbling from his arms. Lyra screamed his name, raw and ragged. He rolled, coughing copper. Terminal, 20 meters. Go! Lyra hesitated one heartbeat, eyes wide with horror, then snatched Mira and ran. Marcus pushed up, vision tunneling. The drone hovered, recharging. He lunged, slamming the datapad into its underbelly port. Fingers flew through blood-slick keys. Emergency shutdown. Medic authority. The drone spasmed, lights strobing, then plummeted. Clang, sparks dancing across the floor. More poured through the gap. Marcus staggered after Lyra, each breath a knife in his side. The tunnel opened into the central hub, a cathedral of servers, data streams cascading down holographic walls like digital waterfalls. At the heart, a physical console, glowing with root access. Lyra reached it first, setting Mira on the deck. The child was sobbing, Paper Sun clutched like a lifeline. Mom, he's hurt, he's bleeding. I know, baby, shh. Lyra's hands shook as she jacked Marcus's datapad into the port. The console bloomed to life, bathing them in cold blue. Marcus collapsed beside them, ribs grinding. Blood pooled beneath him, warm and sticky. Code. It's 7 Alpha Medic. Push the record. Lyra's fingers hesitated over the keys. Drones flooded the chamber. 6, 8, a dozen, forming a tightening ring. Alarms howled. Breach detected. Terminate anomaly. Marcus, her voice broke. There's a failsafe. It'll flag you too. Using root access internally, they'll trace it. You'll be... Do it, he roared, the sound tearing from his throat like shrapnel. Make them real. Wet tears streamed down her face, but her hands moved. Family hail, humanitarian exemption. She layered the adoption, the genetic overwrite, the wartime protections. The console churned, processing. Drones advanced. One raised a cutter, aimed at Mira. Marcus surged up, pure will. He grabbed a loose power conduit, live, sparking, and hurled it. Electricity arced, a blue-white serpent. The lead drone exploded in a fireball, shrapnel pinging off servers. The others stuttered, shields flickering. Now, he bellowed. Lyra slammed the final key. Record accepted. Family hail. System-wide broadcast. Every alarm in the hub flipped from red to green. The drones froze mid-hover, lenses cycling confused amber. A soft, feminine voice, the city's core AI, spoke from every speaker. Humanitarian exemption confirmed. Family hail. Protected. Stand down. The drones powered down, descending gently to the deck like fallen angels. Silence crashed in. Deafening. Lyra stared at the console, breathless. It worked? Marcus slumped against the terminal, blood loss graying the edges of his vision. For a second, the master siren erupted. Deep, bone-rattling. Red text flooded every screen. Internal breach detected. Root access misuse. Auditor M. Hale flagged. Lyra's face crumpled. No, no. Marcus gripped her hand, slick with his blood. Listen, the record's live, but they'll revert it, unless someone holds the door. Understanding dawned. Horror, then resolution. You're staying, he nodded, weak. Waste pod. Outer rim. It'll drop you to the copper shore. Safe zone. I'll keep the override active. Long as I can. Mira threw herself at him, small arms around his neck. No, Dad, come with us. The word, Dad, hit harder than the plasma bolt. Marcus hugged her fierce, ignoring the fire in his ribs. Can't, kid, but you take the sun, okay? Keep it bright. Lyra was crying openly now, violet tears cutting tracks through grime. Marcus, he cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. You were never a glitch. You were the fix. The only one. Drones began rebooting, slower, confused, but waking. The console sparked. The override was fraying. Marcus hauled himself up. Every movement, agony. He keyed the waste pod hatch. Outer rim access, a forgotten escape route for debris. The pod irised open, wind howling through. Lyra lifted Mira inside, the child kicking, sobbing. Mom, Dad! Marcus met Lyra's eyes one last time. Live, he said, For both of us. She lunged, kissing him. Hard, desperate, tasting of salt and storm. Then she was in the pod, arms around Mira. Marcus slammed the hatch. Eject. The pod shot into the red haze, vanishing below the city's hull. He turned back to the console, alone, bleeding out, alarms screaming, drones closed in. He jacked in one last time, fingers leaving bloody prints. Maintain override, family hail, priority lock. The system fought him, firewalls slamming down. He poured everything into it, medic codes, audit privileges, the last shreds of his life. A final prompt, confirm self-termination to secure record. He smiled, small, weary, human. Yes. The console flashed white. Somewhere, deep in the city's heart, Marcus Hale erased himself. The drones reached him as the light died. The pod plummeted through the copper haze, a silver tear falling from the floating city's eye. Inside, the world was reduced to Lyra's heartbeat and Mira's sobs. Raw, wrenching, the sound of a child learning that love can be a wound. The pod's walls rattled, wind screaming through the seals, but the auto harnesses held them tight. Lyra clutched Mira to her chest, one hand pressed to the viewport as Kestrel Spire receded above them, a gleaming monolith shrinking against the storm. "Dad," Mira whimpered, face buried in Lyra's tunic. "He's still up there." Lyra couldn't answer. Her throat was a vice of grief and guilt. He stayed. He stayed for us, tears streaming hot down her cheeks. The pod's nav screen flickered. Drop zone, Copper Shore. 30 seconds. Below, the sea roiled in molten fury, waves crashing against the spire's anti-grav pylons in explosions of rust-red foam. A narrow shelf of reclaimed land jutted out. Once a mining platform, now a forgotten refuge for the erased, the pod's retros fired, thrusters blooming orange. Impact, crunch, metal groaning, then stillness. The hatch hissed open. Cool metallic air rushed in, carrying the scent of salt and iron. Lyra unbuckled Mira, legs trembling as she stepped onto the gritty shore. The pod's emergency beacon blinked once, then died, self-destruct to erase traces. Above, the city's underlights flickered erratically, alarms a distant wail swallowed by the storm. Mira stumbled out, paper sun clutched in tiny fists. "Where's Dad?" she demanded, voice cracking. "He said he'd follow." Lyra knelt, pulling the child close. Rain pelted them, turning dust to mud. He's keeping the door open, baby, so the bad robots can't come get us." Mira's face crumpled. "But I want him here. He promised cake." The words were a knife. Lyra rocked her, humming the green sky lullaby through sobs. Thunder rolled overhead, lightning illuminating the spire's silhouette. Beautiful, cruel, indifferent. Back in the core terminus, Marcus was a ghost in the machine. He slumped against the console, blood pooling beneath him in a dark mirror of the copper sea. Drones encircled him, lenses cold, unblinking, but they didn't fire. The override held, barely. His vision swam, edges blackening, but his fingers, God they hurt, still danced over the keys. Override integrity, 47%, 32%. The system fought back. Firewalls slammed like bulkheads. Audit logs rewound, tracing the breach to him. Subject, M. Hale. Unauthorized root access. Terminate. Pain was everything now. Ribs shattered, lungs filling with fluid. But he laughed, a wet, broken sound. Terminate me? Too late. He initiated the final protocol. Self-deletion, irreversible. His record began to unravel. Audit history, medic logs, every deletion he'd ever signed, including Convoy Epsilon 7. He flagged it for restoration, partial, corrupted, but there, a seed for later. Family Hale, locked, protected, immutable. The console sparked, circuits frying under the strain. Drones twitched, confused by conflicting directives. One raised a cutter, then powered down as the override pulsed through the city's veins. Marcus's head lolled. He saw them in his mind. Lyra's twilight eyes, Mira's paper suns. "Count, everyone," he whispered, blood bubbling on his lips. "Even the ones I erased." The screen flashed. Deletion complete. M. Hale, logistics auditor Elpham. Record terminated. Darkness took him, but in the void a small flame flickered, warm, defiant. 3 days later, the copper shore was a world of mist and salvage. Lyra had found shelter in an abandoned processing hut, rusted walls, a cracked stove that still worked on scavenged power cells. Mira sat on the floor drawing suns on scraps of metal with a charred stick. The storm had passed. The sea lapped gently now, reflecting the spire's distant glow like a memory. Lyra's data band, salvaged from the pod, beeped. She'd kept it powered down, terrified of pings. But hope was stubborn. She activated it. A new authorization key blinked. Guardian, Marcus Hale, deceased. Credentials active. Her breath hitched. Tears, again. But different now. A message scrolled, embedded in the key. To Lyra and Mira. You are real, live loud. Below it, a system bulletin broadcast citywide. Marcus Hale, deceased in system accident. Record terminated. Lyra sank to her knees, databand clutched to her chest. Mira crawled over, peering at the screen. That's Dad's name. Yes, baby. Lyra's voice was raw. He made us safe by saying goodbye. Mira's lip trembled. But he's coming back, right? Ghosts do that in stories. Lyra pulled her close, staring at the spire through the hut's cracked window. He never left. He's in the system now, watching. That night, the city's lights dimmed. Routine maintenance, or something else. Lyra held Mira as she slept, the data band glowing faintly on her wrist. Marcus's credentials pulsed like a heartbeat. In the lower decks, whispers began, deleted files reappearing, refugee manifests flagged for review. No one knew why, but the purge slowed. On the copper shore, Lyra whispered to the dark, "You burned yourself out for us." The sea answered with a soft, rhythmic hush. And somewhere in the city's vast code, a single line endured, count everyone. The sacrifice was complete. The light he'd become would never go no. A month slipped by on the copper shore like tide marks on rusted metal. Slow, inevitable, carving new shapes into the old. The abandoned processing hut had become something more than shelter. Lyra scavenged solar sheets from derelict drones, wiring them to the cracked stove until it hummed with steady warmth. Mira turned the walls into a galaxy, paper suns evolving into foil constellations, crayon planets orbiting a stick-figure family labeled US in wobbly letters. The data band on Lyra's wrist never dimmed. Marcus's credentials, deceased yet active, were a quiet miracle. They unlocked ration drops from automated barges, medical kits stamped with wartime seals, even a small fabricator that spat out thread and bandages. Whispers reached the shore from other exiles. The purge had stalled in the lower decks. Deleted files resurfacing. Families pulled back from reclamation at the last second. No one knew the source. But Lyra did. She started small. A clinic in the hut's back room, sterile pads unrolled on a salvage table, herbs dried from seaweed and copper moss. The displaced came first in trickles. A lilac-skinned elder with plasma scars, a human child coughing rust lung, a bonded pair clutching forged papers that suddenly worked. Lyra treated them with the precision Marcus had once reserved for audits. Gentle, thorough, human. Guardian Hale's clinic, Mira announced to every newcomer, ears perked with pride. She handed out paper suns like prescriptions. Dad says light fixes everything. Word spread. The trickle became a stream. Lyra's hands grew calloused from sutures, her voice steady from repeating the same truth. You are not invalid. You are seen. One evening, as the artificial sun dipped behind the spire's silhouette, a city bulletin crackled across every screen, even the scavenged one in the hut. Kestrel Spire, Humanitarian Reform. The Hale Protocol restores deleted refugee records, system-wide implementation. Origin, anonymous root contribution. Lyra froze, needle mid-stitch in a child's arm. The patient, a wide-eyed boy, tilted his head. That your name, Doc? She finished the suture, tied it off with trembling fingers. It's a promise kept. Mira danced in circles, foil suns swirling. Dad did it. He's fixing the whole city. Lyra pulled her close, burying her face in the child's hair. Laughter and tears mixed. He never stopped, the sound echoing off rusted walls like a heartbeat. Weeks turned to routines. The clinic grew, a second room partitioned with salvaged alloy, a garden of vat-grown herbs on the roof. Exiles brought skills, mechanics, teachers, storytellers, and the copper shore bloomed into a village of the unerased. Children played in the shallows, chasing bioluminescent foam. At night they gathered around the stove, sharing tales of the man who'd burned himself into code. Lyra never spoke of him directly, but every patient left with a paper sun. Every record she restored carried a hidden line: count everyone. One crisp evening, the city's lights twinkling like cold stars above, Lyra and Mira sat on the hut's roof. The sea lapped gentle, copper waves catching the spire's reflection in ripples of blood and gold. Mira leaned against her, legs dangling, a new drawing in her lap. Three figures under a massive sun, labeled Family Hail in careful block letters. "Mom!" Mira's voice was soft, thoughtful. "Do you think he still sees us?" Lyra looked up. The spire's underlights pulsed, once, twice, like a wink. Somewhere in its vast data heart, a protocol ran eternal, restoring, protecting, remembering. She smiled, small and fierce. "He never stopped." Mira tucked the drawing into Lyra's hand. "For the wall, so he knows we're okay." Lyra pinned it above the clinic door that night, beside the growing constellation of suns. Patients paused to touch it, whispering thanks to a ghost they'd never met. Years later, historians would argue over the Hale protocol's origin: an audit glitch, a rogue AI, a forgotten medic's last act. But on the copper shore, the truth lived in paper suns and restored names. In a world ruled by data, compassion had become the most dangerous rebellion. And Marcus Hale, erased yet eternal, watched over it all, the light that never went out.